Welcome to the Kelbourne Woolens Tips and Tricks October Hat Provisional Cast On. Before we begin, make sure you have all of your supplies. You will need the October hat by Sloane Rosenthal, a crochet hook, and needles for the ribbing. You'll also need smooth waste yarn and your working yarn. For this tutorial, I'm using Kelbourne Woolens Germantown, jade for the chain, salmon for the cast on, and pebble for the hat. First, make a crochet chain with your waste yarn and hook. The pattern calls for a cast on of 61 stitches, so I will be chaining about 70 stitches just to be sure I have enough to work with. Once the chain is complete, you will be picking up your stitches to form the base of the cast on. I'm using the salmon here for clarity in the tutorial, but you may use the same yarn you used for your chain. Just don't accidentally use your working yarn. When picking up your stitches, begin at the end of your chain where the V's are pointing to the right. To pick up the stitches, insert the needle into the bump into the back of the chain, wrap your working yarn around the needle and pull it through. Make sure you are working into the space behind the bump and not accidentally splitting the yarn, as doing so will make it much more difficult to remove once the cast on is complete. Continue working in this manner along the chain. Once you have cast on 61 stitches, cut the waste yarn, grab your working yarn, and it's time to start knitting. With your working yarn, knit 1, yarn over, and repeat across until 1 stitch remains, ending with a knit 1. You should now have 121 stitches on your needle. Do not join for working in the round, as you will continue working back and forth for the next few rows. Rows 2 through 4 establish the edge. By slipping stitches, you're creating a tubular self-contained edge. Make sure you're slipping the stitch with the yarn in front. This will hide the slip inside the tube. And when bringing the yarn to the back, make sure you're doing so in between the stitches and not over the needle. Once rows 2 through 4 are complete, the stitches need to be rearranged for a knit 2, purl 2 ribbing. The pattern has you slide stitches onto a cable needle, but I find this process to be cumbersome and slow. Instead, you can see how I carefully slide the next 2 stitches off of the left-hand needle and twist them with a knit stitch in front, and then replace them back onto the left-hand needle. Working these 2 stitches as a knit 1, purl 1 establishes the knit 2, purl 2 ribbing. Once you've done so, you're well on your way. If you prefer using a cable or spare needle, it's totally fine. I just thought this was a nice little additional tip to include. Once the row is complete, it is time to join for working in the round. Slip the first stitch from the right-hand needle to the left-hand needle and knit the first 2 stitches together. This reduces your stitch count from 121 to 120 stitches and is the last step in establishing the knit 2, purl 2 ribbing. Then work in ribbing around to the end. Your cast on is complete. The pattern has you finish the hat before removing the waste yarn, but if you are anxious to see if your cast on worked, feel free to do that now. Since the picked up stitches began at the end of the chain, it's very easy to remove the last loop and unzip the yarn. Once the chain is off, the picked up stitches easily slide out of the ribbing. Once the provisional cast on is removed, you can see the stretchy self-contained edge that has been created. Since the tubular cast-on replicates a commercially made or machine knit edge, it creates a lovely professional finished look. Not just great for hats, you can also use the cast-on for anything that calls for a stretchy edge: necks, sleeve cuffs, socks, etc. Thanks for watching and happy knitting!